There is a quiet ache that lives inside many people. It rarely announces itself clearly. Instead, it appears as a restlessness that never fully disappears, a subtle feeling that something essential is missing. Even when life looks good from the outside, when relationships seem stable and goals are being achieved, the emptiness lingers. You may have spent years trying to understand it. Therapy, self-help books, meditation, journaling, every modern tool designed to heal the mind. Yet the hollow place remains. Carl Jung, one of the deepest explorers of the human psyche, believed that this unnamed wound often traces back to the first relationship we ever experienced, the bond with our mother. Before you assume this is about blaming mothers, pause for a moment. This conversation is not about accusation. In fact, Jung believed that blame itself becomes one of the greatest obstacles to healing. The goal is understanding, not judgment. Understanding means recognizing the invisible psychological forces shaping your choices, your relationships, and your sense of self long before you had the language to describe them. Jung and his student Erich Neumann described something called the Great Mother archetype. This is not your personal mother. It is a universal psychological image that exists within the collective unconscious of humanity. You can think of it as a blueprint for what mother represents at the deepest level of the human mind. This archetype has two sides. On one side is the nurturing mother, warmth, protection, nourishment, the feeling of being safe in the world. On the other side is the terrible mother, the image of abandonment, suffocation, or emotional absence. One side creates belonging, the other creates fear and instability. In healthy psychological development, a real mother becomes the living carrier of the nurturing aspect of that archetype. She provides emotional containment, a secure base that allows a child to explore the world while knowing there is always somewhere safe to return. But when a mother cannot provide that emotional containment, perhaps because of her own trauma, depression, stress, or unresolved wounds, something important happens within the child's psyche. The archetype splits. Instead of internalizing the sense of safety, the child internalizes uncertainty and emotional instability. This process happens before language develops, deep within the pre-verbal layers of the mind. The result is a feeling that can be difficult to explain. It feels like standing on unstable ground, like the emotional floor beneath you could disappear at any moment. Many people assume this feeling is simply part of their personality. They describe themselves as anxious, overly sensitive, or permanently insecure. But Jung would argue that these feelings are often echoes of an early emotional wound. Jung's insight was powerful partly because it came from personal experience. His own mother struggled with psychological instability, and during Jung's childhood, she was hospitalized for several months when he was only 3 years old. Imagine that moment from the perspective of a child whose entire world revolves around one person. One day, she is simply gone. In his autobiography, Memories, Dreams, Reflections, Jung described experiencing his mother as two different personalities. One was warm and ordinary. The other seemed distant, mysterious, almost unsettling. After her absence, Jung later admitted that he developed a deep mistrust of the word love. To him, love became associated with unpredictability and loss. This confession is one of the most revealing moments in psychological history. The man who mapped the deepest structures of the unconscious was shaped by the absence of maternal security. Much of his life's work, his theories of the shadow, the anima, and the process of individuation, can be seen as part of his personal attempt to understand and heal that early wound. Another concept expands on Jung's ideas in a fascinating way. The psychoanalyst André Green introduced the idea of the dead mother complex. Despite its name, it does not refer to physical death. Instead, it describes a mother who is emotionally absent. She may be physically present but psychologically distant, lost in depression, grief, anxiety, or her own unresolved struggles. If this moved you, comment 9 right now. If it didn't, comment 0. Your voice matters. Take 1 second and share it. A child in this environment learns an unspoken lesson. My emotions are too much. My needs overwhelm the person who is supposed to care for me. In response, the child adapts. They become quiet, observant, overly responsible. They learn to read emotional signals quickly. They become sensitive to the moods of others long before they learn to understand their own. Some children in this situation even become emotional caretakers for their parents. As adults, many of these individuals experience a subtle form of depression that does not feel like sadness. Instead, it feels like emptiness, a kind of emotional numbness. The child once tried to bring life into a relationship that could not respond, and that effort leaves a lasting mark. This early dynamic often shapes adult behavior in ways people rarely recognize. Many individuals develop what could be called a performance of worthiness. They feel a deep belief that they must constantly prove their value. They become perfectionists, overachievers, helpers who struggle to say no. Their self-worth becomes tied to accomplishment. Stillness feels uncomfortable because when activity stops, the inner emptiness becomes visible again. Another pattern appears in relationships. Some people develop anxious attachment, searching desperately for the emotional security they lacked as children. Others develop avoidant patterns, building emotional distance to prevent future abandonment. Both patterns originate from the same early wound. The mother relationship also influences how we experience our own bodies. A mother who struggles with her physical identity or self-worth can unintentionally transmit those attitudes to her child. Difficulties with body image, food, or feeling comfortable in one's own skin sometimes reflect these early dynamics. For men, Jung believed this relationship shapes the development of the anima, the inner feminine aspect of the psyche. The anima influences emotional sensitivity, creativity, and the ability to form meaningful relationships. If the maternal relationship was painful or distant, the anima can become distorted. Some men respond by searching endlessly for the perfect partner, who will finally provide the emotional security they lacked. Others withdraw emotionally and struggle to form deep connections. Healing requires separating the inner feminine archetype from the personal mother, allowing relationships to develop authentically rather than through unconscious projection. For women, the maternal relationship influences the development of feminine identity. A controlling mother may lead a daughter to reject aspects of femininity altogether. An absent mother may lead the daughter to spend her life trying to become the perfect woman her mother never was. Sometimes, daughters absorb their mother's unfulfilled dreams and limitations without realizing it. In these situations, the authentic self remains hidden beneath inherited expectations. This leads to an important point. Healing is not about blaming your mother. Anger and grief about childhood experiences are valid emotions, but remaining trapped in blame keeps the psyche tied to the past. Jung emphasized the importance of reclaiming psychological projections. As long as healing is framed entirely around what someone else failed to provide, personal growth becomes dependent on that person. Your mother was once a child herself. She inherited wounds from previous generations, often without understanding them. Recognizing this chain of inherited pain does not excuse harm, but it creates the possibility of breaking the pattern. Healing begins with grief. You must allow yourself to mourn the mother you needed but did not receive. This grief is not weakness. It is acknowledgement of a real loss. Only when that loss is recognized can healing begin. The next step involves a process therapists often call reparenting. This means learning to provide for yourself the emotional support that was missing earlier in life. You begin developing an internal relationship with the vulnerable parts of yourself. You listen to your own emotional needs. You validate your feelings. You become the source of safety you once searched for in others. This process is not a single moment of realization. It is a daily practice. And because this wound formed before language, it often lives in the body as much as in the mind. A simple exercise can help begin that reconnection. Place one hand on your chest and the other on your abdomen. Close your eyes. Breathe slowly. Notice the warmth of your own hands and the rhythm of your breath. Remain there for several minutes. This gesture sends a signal through the nervous system that you are safe. It is a physical expression of self-containment. In that moment, you become the nurturing presence you once needed. Practiced regularly, small acts like this gradually reshape the body's experience of safety. Understanding the mother wound is not meant to create resentment. Instead, it offers a path toward freedom. When you recognize the origin of certain emotional patterns, you stop searching endlessly for someone else to repair them. You begin the deeper process Jung called individuation. Individuation is the journey toward psychological wholeness. It is the process of becoming the person you were always meant to be before early experiences shaped your identity. The path is challenging, but it is also profoundly meaningful. Because at the end of that path is something many people spend their entire lives searching for: a return to yourself.